Peace and blessings, everyone. Welcome to Spotlight. As we know, this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the month of October. And this year's theme is domestic violence. Who does it affect? Do you know what to do if you're attacked by your partner or your spouse? Are you aware of the protocols that were created for your protection and privacy? The spotlight will shine on these and other domestic issues this evening. We're also going to be talking about the telestroke program that has been launched by the BVI HSA. How can you prevent strokes? How can you prevent the debilitating paralysis of strokes? And how do you know when you are having a stroke? Spotlight's interview with the BVI Health Services Authority Chief of Medical Staff, Dr. Joan Samuel, and HEMA Health of Puerto Rico neurologist, Dr. Ulysses Noble, will shine a light on the extremely important newly launched telestroke service at People's Hospital. That interview will answer all these questions and more. But first, let's go to JTV's reporter, Sean Rose, with the stories making the news this week. Sean?
Greetings, Edgerenka. Greetings, viewers. Let's look at a health-related issue to get things rolling. The Health Minister, Honorable Ronnie Skelton, was taken to a medical facility outside of the territory earlier today, and we are told that he's in stable condition and he is in high spirits. And I'm sure many people will be happy to hear that the Health Minister will be okay. On Monday, he was examined by BVI HSA health officials and advised to travel overseas for further medical attention and observation. So far, Edgerenka, it sounds as though the Health Minister will be okay and we should not worry too much.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. Sean, the Minister of Health, has a lot of work ahead of him. He's initiated some really, really important programs here in the Virgin Islands, the National Health Insurance Program to be implemented, as well as the National Strategic Plan for the Prevention of Non-Communicable Chronic Diseases.
And of course, rolling out the new People's Hospital facility.
Rolling out the new People's Hospital. But I even think that those two things are even more important than rolling out the new People's Hospital. That's my personal preference.
Because they would reduce the number of people going there for medical care.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's what we want to do. We want to have a better quality of life. And I'm hoping that the strategy for the prevention of non-communicable chronic diseases will help us to have a better quality of life. So certainly he's got to finish that work. So I'm hoping that he has a speedy recovery.
And you may recall on Monday that the minister was expected to address the launch of the telestroke services at People's Hospital. He was listed on the program to speak, but couldn't attend. And of course, subsequently, we all found out why.
Yes. Well, and certainly we're going to be talking about the telestroke program services this evening, but that is a significant development here in the territory to be able to have your treatment, immediate treatment for your stroke from specialists that in a remote location. So persons, specialists, neurologists living in America or living any place in the world, we have access to those persons relatively immediately through high-speed internet, which you'll learn about tonight. And we could treat strokes within that 4-hour window period that prevent the debilitating paralysis that comes along with having strokes that's not treated soon enough. So certainly our chronic diseases are presenting many strokes in the BVI, and with this service, we hope to be able to mitigate those illnesses and have people come out or recover with a better quality of life. And of course, we want to prevent persons from having strokes altogether.
Much appreciated. Let's shift gears a bit though. Let's go to the Cruise Pier Development Project. The Minister for Communications and Works, Honorable Mark Vanterpool, today issued a statement, and I suspect he is hoping to calm fears and concerns with regards to the arrival or the number of cruise passengers who would be arriving in the territory this upcoming cruise season. Now, the minister indicated that from October, this very month, to about April 2015, the territory can expect to see some 612,000 cruise passengers visiting the territory. And I suspect that many people would be already working out the math, because last year the figures were not that high. And of course, the same happened in 2012. But before we go further, let's hear the minister explain exactly how he sees things.
The latest report from the BVI Ports Authority shows that between this month of October 2014 and April 30, 2015, a total of 297 cruise ships are expected to call in the Virgin Islands, bringing a total of 612,372 passengers to the territory. Of that number, 169 calls will be made to Rotown Harbour, totaling 450,000 passengers, and 128 calls to the sister islands, totaling 162,372 passengers. This totals 612,372 passengers as stated above. A schedule of calls for the 2014-2015 season will be published by the BVI Ports Authority. Please feel free to get a copy and familiarize yourselves with this schedule. In the meantime, the government of the Virgin Islands is forging ahead with the Cruise Pier construction project, which will see an expanded, widened, and strengthened dock and the development of landside facilities to include a welcome center, immigration and customs, restaurants, and shopping facilities. There is also work being done on dredging the turn basins to accommodate larger vessels. There have been some concerns about the safety of cruise passengers during the construction phase. But I want to let you know that the government of Premier Dr. Orlando Smith takes this very seriously, and we are doing everything to ensure that safety is paramount not only for cruise passengers, but for the project workers as well.
So there you go, Edgerenka. I can tell you, though, that in 2013, the total number of visitors who came to the Virgin Islands is 731,000. And with the expectation of 612,000 cruise passengers alone, you would agree with the Premier and Minister of Tourism when he said earlier this year that there is an increase, and there will be an increase in the number of tourist arrivals to this territory by the end of this year, and of course moving into 2015. So basically you're seeing an increase in the number of arrivals when you look back to, let's say, 2007, 2008, when the numbers fell to 300 and maybe around 400,000 plus visitors total.
Well, certainly that's welcome news, Sean. If you're going to get about 700,000 cruise passengers alone, and we had a total 612,000
Yes.
Cruise passengers alone, and we had a total of 712,000 tourists totally, including
Yes.
cruise.
The day trippers, you name it.
Well, certainly that is a marked increase in the number of visitors to the territory when you include the day trippers and the overnight tourists and so
That's
on.
right.
So certainly tourism is slated to really make some gains in this season, considering the construction that's going on and the tendering between the ships and the port that's going to take place.
Precisely.
And
the 5
so on.
cancellations by Royal Caribbean.
Yeah. So it's welcome news. I know, particularly for the tour operators and the taxi drivers and the shops in Rotown as well. So it's going to be a good season, and of course we are looking forward to the completion of the landside development and the dock, which of course will really push our tourism over the top, or at least close to the 1 million tourists a year mark, which of course that's where we're going. So that's good news. We got
Interesting times ahead.
Yeah, we got to go. Thanks for the reports, Sean.
welcome.
Good reports, and of course we wish the Minister of Health and Social Development a speedy recovery. We're going to take a break for word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to come back with the members of the FSN Family Support Network, and we're going to be talking about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Keep it locked right here at Spotlight.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands and CCT Global Communications.
Life is like a mountain you must climb. Life is like a treasure you must find. A baby learning how to talk. With just one step begins to walk. One step at a time will lead you to paradise. Your dreams are there to find. One step to paradise.
Did you do this? Are you doing this? You will be fined or jailed. You're hurting our community. You're hurting our economy. We must take a stand. Act now and report illegal dumpers to the Department of Waste Management at 468-4934. Stop illegal dumping in our country.
It's not even about being bigger. David and Goliath taught us that it's about being better than you were yesterday. At CCT, we're committed to building on better music downloads, better videos, better online gaming, better internet so your kids can get their homework done at better hours, better customer support when you need it the most. A better everything makes a better BVI so that you could work better and live better. You see, at CCT, we're not only a local company, we're a better company with a real 4G network. Visit your CCT flagship store today and experience CCT Life Unlimited.
Have you heard? Clarence Summers Limited Home Centers is making things more affordable in the British Virgin Islands. We are making things better for you during these hard times by reducing prices throughout our stores, using our new pricing strategy. But wait, there's more. Created exclusively for our loyal customers, now there's a rewards program implemented just for you. Sign up to become a loyalty member and be the first to get member perks such as exclusive email offers, members-only discounts, private sales event, and much, much more. Our loyalty program gives you savings and benefits that will be equal to or better than our crazy sales of past years. With our loyalty program, you'll get monthly specials on items exclusively only for our loyalty customers at prices that won't be matched. Enroll in our loyalty program today. It's free. It's easy. Get ready, BVI, for lower prices at Clarence Summers Limited Home Centers. Clarence Summers Limited, your number one stop for the best products at the lowest prices, period. Locally owned and operated since 1967.
He's been working so hard on this. I am so extremely proud of him.
Walter Emerson, right-hand philosopher, once said, and I quote, "To finish the moment, to find the journey's end in every step of the road, to live the greatest number of good hours is wisdom."
Being a single parent, my husband died. Juggling work, children, school was tough, but I did it.
I feel like I have a fresh start in life. HLSCC has definitely exceeded my expectations.
I am the younger of two in my family, but I am the first to go off to a university. HLSCC has given me the right jump start to paving my success.
You don't come to college just to come to college. You come to college to graduate.
Just coming out of high school at a very young age, HLSCC was the ideal stepping stone to prepare me for the great award. It's right at home with great facilities and great lecturers. My college experience was phenomenal.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Edgerenka, and I'm here with 3 members of the Family Support Network. First, I want to introduce Mrs. Judith Childs. She's the president of Family Support Network. Judith, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Yes. Dr. Maris Hodge-Wright, executive board member. Maris, good to see you as usual. And Dr. Ron McInerney, vice president of Family Support Network. Dr. McInerney, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Family Support Network has been around for how many years now?
More than 20, 1989.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
How has the Family Support Network grown to meet the demand?
Well, in terms of staff, it hasn't necessarily grown over the years, but it has emerged. It emerges as life in the BVI changes, as we have to stay relevant with what's happening here, so we stay relevant. So for instance, right now, a big part of what we do is provide food and clothes for people who need it. And we've had to step that up recently because social development has started to send us their clients for food. And so we have had like 21 new clients in the month of September just for food alone.
Well, when you say send you for food, is that in relationship to domestic violence, or is it just people that are hungry?
Not necessarily, it's just people that are in need, yes.
So you are offering additional services to your mandate?
Right, because that is what people need.
Right.
People, especially people with families, because there's a lot of unemployment, underemployment, all those things. You have people who have children, for men who have orders to pay child support and aren't paying it. And then you have people who have men who aren't paying it and they don't have orders to pay. So, it's kind of a rough thing.
It's important to understand that Family Support Network isn't just an agency that provides services for victims of domestic violence.
Yes.
It's expanded and grown into offering services for people who are needy for food, as well as counseling services for families who may be having difficulties learning to manage their children, or other problems as well. So it's broad in scope in terms of the goal and purpose.
So it has realized its purpose as a family support network, because I remember when it started, it mainly dealt with
victims of domestic violence.
The victims of domestic violence, and helping to protect them from further violence and give them shelter, and the spouses and the victims and the children, places to live, places to hide. That's when it started out, but it has expanded into total family services.
Yeah, you understand it. I mean, it's Family Support Network. One of the things that families need is to support themselves physically. And if you can't support yourself, if you can't feed your children, you need support. And sometimes you go to other agencies, you have to wait for a committee to meet to decide whether or not to give you a grant. Whereas Family Support, you can go and get a bag of groceries and take home to feed your children that day.
So you get immediate support.
Once it's there.
And where is it located now?
It's on Charlwell Street. It's in the Pickering building. It's directly across the street from Ferrara Keren's law firm.
Okay, right.
So if you were coming up Main Street, you would make the right turn at the restaurant Midtown.
So that's where the mosque.
Right next to it.
Right next to the mosque.
Those are our neighbors, and they are actually very good neighbors. They're supporters.
Okay, that's great. So now, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and Family Support Network is taking part in helping to bring awareness to all the challenges that families are having, not only domestic violence, but family challenges. What
Yes.
are some of the things that's happening?
Well, last Saturday we participated with the Gender Affairs in a forum to young people, boys and girls, teenagers at the high school. It was very, very successful. I was glad to see so many boys come out. Actually, more boys attended than we were expecting. So I think that's really great. They had some wonderful presenters. Sherry DeCastro was a presenter, pretty face, but also smart young woman, and she did a great presentation. They had a lot of really impressive presenters and a lot of adult groups there. Zonta was there, WOPA was there, a lot of people there, males were there. Some groups that I didn't even know we had here, and they took the kids into different sessions and talked to them about things like, they were talked to about violence and domestic violence. They were talked to about healthy relationships and self-esteem, and it was a very, very good event. But also, we are going out to the various schools with Gender Affairs. We work with Gender Affairs every year as much as possible because really, they have a very small staff, we have a very small staff. There's no point in us sort of reinventing the wheel and duplicating efforts. So we work with Gender Affairs. They usually have a very ambitious program. There are going to be self-defense classes coming up soon. They're also going to the Sister Islands. They have events planned for Virgin Gorda and Josephine. And then on the 18th, we have the forum for adults coming up at the college.
Okay. Persons wanting to get more information about the activities during Domestic Violence Month, how do they get that information?
They can call Family Support Network at 494-7622, or they can call Gender Affairs. They have an extension off of 468-3701. And the staff there will be more than happy to. You can ask for them to email you the list of events, or somebody will tell you what's going on. There's something going on every day.
The list of events have already been published in the newspaper as well. So there's a whole list of activities.
And this is in the Island Sun and the BVI Beacon. So
this year they're even going out to bars. They're doing presentations in bars this year.
Okay. And why is that? What you're hoping to accomplish?
Because it's a captive audience.
It's a captive audience, and one of the things that I guess I won't say that alcohol brings on addiction, but it does lower inhibitions. And if you're angry at your wife or your spouse, there have been instances where, and it's more prevalent that it would happen when you're inebriated and you've been under the influence of alcohol, that you're angry about something that you would probably normally argue about or you might fuss about. Sometimes you get violent about because all your inhibitions are pretty much lowered. So I think it's a good place to start to talk about domestic violence. And the guys may not appreciate it, but at least they're going to sit there because they're not going to leave their drink, so they're going to sit and listen to it.
Okay. This year's theme is domestic violence. Who does it affect? Yes, and you have a list of persons, members of the community that it affects. Who does it affect?
Everybody. Everybody.
Yeah. How so though? I mean, I'm not the best. I don't have a domestic violence problem.
No.
How does it affect me?
How does it affect you?
Yeah.
If your daughter grows up, and I guess, they're already grown up, and meets a young man whose parents, who grew up in a home where there was a culture of domestic violence, then it becomes your problem. Because now your daughter is marrying someone who may abuse her, and even if he doesn't abuse her, there's going to be some psychological effects and emotional effects that are going to come into the relationship that can pass on to your grandchildren who may or may not be, who will pick up on the dysfunctional behaviors. And in another generation, again, you're having it going on. So it affects all of us. We think that if it doesn't happen in my house, it doesn't affect me. but you don't know who your kids are going to marry to. You don't know who you're going to meet in your workplace. You might meet someone who's dealing with domestic violence, and you're working with this person, and you're noticing things, but you don't exactly know why they're behaving that way. A lot of times it has to do with what's going on at home. So it affects all of us.
Now, is there a new list of actions that are considered to be domestic violence actions? How do we know? How do we know? I don't want to put it that way, but how do we know when a a violent act is committed against us? How do you determine whether something is domestic violence or not?
Well, domestic violence can be, doesn't always have to be physical. It can be physical, emotional, financial, sexual. There's various forms of domestic violence. And in homes, it depends upon the structure of the home in terms of how the domestic violence is presented. So we need to be aware that domestic violence isn't just hitting. That's right. So we need to recognize the signs and symptoms.
So when you say financial, for example, if I was a sole breadwinner in the house and I withheld money from my spouse, because I was angry for some particular reason, that would be considered domestic violence.
It can be, yes.
And I mightn't call it violence, but it's abuse.
Abuse.
Right. And is there any legal redress for that person in that situation?
Well, it was put into the law, the new Domestic Violence Act, as a form of abuse. And your redress is, if you're the woman who is having money withheld, then you're going to have to do something about that, and it's going to have to be legal. So
now you're able to go to court and seek redress through the courts because this is now in the law.
Right.
These forms of abuse, recognized forms of abuse is now in the law, so you have now legal redress.
Not paying your child support is a form of abuse.
It's not exactly that simple. I mean, realistically, there's a whole process. The person who's being abused that way, she could be working as well as the man in the house, and the man could be controlling both their incomes. So, but the woman really needs to be empowered. That's where the counseling services come into play. If she recognizes that this is not healthy behavior, that this in some way is negatively impacting her, hopefully she can get in touch with someone who can give her the guidance through counseling, and then perhaps help her get connected with the legal system to do something more.
Okay, so a person who has been, who thinks that they're being abused, or who experienced domestic violence, what do they do? If let's just say it's physical violence, so how do you handle that situation as a person in a household who's having those types of experiences?
I would say look for help.
How do you get help? I mean, what do you go to account? I mean, you come home one night, and your husband comes home drunk, and he proceeds to beat you up for whatever insecurities he has or whatever suspicions he may have. And what do you do? How do you manage that? And how does the family support network help you to mitigate that type of circumstance?
Well, if somebody comes home and beats you up, the first thing I want to say is go to the hospital, seek medical attention. And once you seek medical attention, once the doctor sees that you've been beaten up, if there are bruises and whatever, they are supposed to call the police, who usually comes and takes pictures or whatever, and then there's a legal thing. But beyond that, you should seek emotional help. You should find a counselor. Right. Go to FSN, go to a psychologist if you want to.
The situation is that the person needs to reach out, the person needs to ask for help. But if someone were to go to the emergency room because they had been abused in some way, physically, the professionals in the hospital are supposed to report that case of abuse, whether it's an adult or a child. So there is already a system in place for the person to move on taking some action, because the police would be called.
Okay, but there's some protocols were just signed on last week. Well,
those are the new protocols. We've always had protocols for how cases of domestic violence are to be handled. Okay?
But not really legal protocols, right? I mean, if you always had protocols,
yeah.
What's the need to have
nobody
the
ever
signing of
enforced them.
a protocol? So now, but now they are enforceable.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So the protocols are there now; they're enforceable. We're gonna take a break for a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, I'd like to give the viewing audience a scenario of a domestic violence situation and how that would be handled, in order to give them a sense of the added safety and the added security and the added protection and the added redress that is provided, if it is provided, by the protocols or by the way you should handle something or conduct yourselves in a domestic violence situation, should you find yourself in that situation. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come right back after these words from our sponsors with more Spotlight.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands and CCT Global Communications.
What are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your life? Hanging out on the corner where there is no future. What are you doing with your life? Tell me, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your life? That's what you should do with your life.
Littering is a criminal offense under the Littering Abatement Act. Our litter wardens and police officers are hunting for litterers. You will be caught when you least expect. Litterers are subject to a $500 fine or 3 months in prison. Stop littering in our country. You are hurting our environment and you are hurting our economy.
It's not even about being bigger. David and Goliath taught us that it's about being better than you were yesterday. At CCT, we're committed to building on better music downloads, better videos, better online gaming, better internet so your kids can get their homework done at better hours, better customer support when you need it the most. A better everything makes a better BVI so that you could work better and live better. You see, at CCT, we're not only a local company, we're a better company with the real 4G network. Visit your CCT flagship store today and experience CCT Life Unlimited.
Cheers to a month of mouth-watering events. Join us this November for a series of exciting culinary experiences such as the Barefoot Gourmet Soiree, with proceeds donated towards hospitality scholarships for local students. Or experience an evening with our participating hotels, hosting visiting chefs from around the globe. Join our Restaurant Week cook-offs and sample special discounted menu items. Every Friday of the month, our chefs prepare savory local dishes. Head to Virgin Gorda for the first ever On the Rocks bar crawl. This food-filled month climaxes on the Drowned Island at the 2nd Annual Anegada Lobster Festival. Visit www.bbifoodfet.com or call the BVI Tourist Board at 284-494-3134 for more details.
All the makings of a major disaster. Torrential rain and winds of more than 300 kilometers per hour.
Disasters can happen at any time.
Are you financially prepared to deal with the repercussions?
Don't allow disaster to creep up on you without being financially prepared.
Put aside a few dollars each month for a rainy day. Everyone should have an emergency fund.
Careful, don't use your rainy day fund for shopping sprees.
Keep it.
just in case of emergencies.
Consistent savings of any amount adds up. Start saving today.
This message is brought to you by
the Financial Education Network,
the Department of Disaster Management,
the Department of Information and Public Relations,
and Money Matters BVI, seeking to create a more financially literate BVI.
Have you heard? Clarence Summers Limited Home Centers is making things more affordable in the British Virgin Islands. We are making things better for you during these hard times by reducing prices throughout our stores, using our new pricing strategy. But wait, there's more. Created exclusively for our loyal customers, now there's a rewards program implemented just for you. Sign up to become a loyalty member and be the first to get member perks such as exclusive email offers, members-only discounts, private sales event, and much, much more. Our loyalty program gives you savings and benefits that will be equal to or better than our crazy sales of past years. With our loyalty program, you'll get monthly specials on items exclusively only for our loyalty customers at prices that won't be matched. Enroll in our loyalty program today. It's free. It's easy. Get ready, BVI, for lower prices at Clarence Summers Limited Home Centers. Clarence Summers Limited, your #1 stop for the best products at the lowest prices, period. Locally owned and operated since 1967.
I'm here to find out about my husband's social security. You hear about that bad accident?
Yes.
This my husband get mashed up.
He went to Puerto Rico?
Yeah. It was a serious accident, you know. But I don't get some of that security money.
Miss, your husband's contributions are not up to date.
What? What do you mean by that?
Remember, you must secure your tomorrow today.
Check on your contribution status right away.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm having a conversation with members of the Family Support Network, Dr. McInerney, Dr. Maris Hodgwright, and Ms. Judith Charles. Yeah, thank you, Judith. Yes, and we're talking about the Family Support Network and all of the services it provides. And we left off talking about domestic violence in particular and how some new protocols have just come into place that's going to affect the way people report and the redress that they have. And I wanted to get the audience to get an understanding of how to behave when they find themselves in certain situations, because I think many persons still are afraid to act.
Absolutely.
And they remain in a situation and continue the cycle of abuse time and time again, and don't know the law, don't realize that there is help, don't even know that the Family Support Network exists and what the services you offer. So take us through a scenario where a husband is beating his wife or is abusing his wife in some way, and she's afraid for her life. What should she do? How does she start to get help?
Well, if she has accepted that she is in a domestic violence situation, if she's no longer in denial and she's actually accepted that this is happening to her, if she is not in crisis at the moment, she can go to Family Support Network for help. She will get counseling and she will get advice and information for if she's going to stay in this relationship and try to work with this person. There are things like you should have your car keys always in a special place, some extra money, and in a place where if the violence occurs, you grab these things and you run. You get to a safe place first and foremost. If as Maris said earlier, if you've been hurt, go directly to the hospital for help, because then the hospital, once they determine that you have been hurt, are mandated now to call the police. If you go to FSN without having gone to the hospital or to the police directly after a violent incident, and you want to file a complaint or you want to have a restraining order against this person, then you will have to go to the police department and write out your complaint.
And go ahead, Dr. McInerney.
The most important thing is what Judith said in the beginning. The abused person, the victim, must come to grips with the reality that they're living in an abusive situation and that they do not deserve to be abused. No one deserves to be abused. So that person needs to come to that reality and then reach out to the resources in the community, such as Family Support Network, to get the additional support, whether it's financial support or food or connection with taking some legal action. So it starts with the person recognizing that if they're afraid of their partner, or if their partner is being physically, psychologically, financially, sexually, emotionally abusive, they need to take some action to protect themselves.
So you should be planning, if you're in a situation where there's some abuse going on, and you should recognize that abuse and start to plan for a time
you
when
need an escape plan.
Yeah, so at a time when you need to get away in an emergency.
That's right.
Emergency.
That's right.
And Family Support Network can help you with that plan.
Yeah, Family Support Network has a hotline,
Yes.
a 24-hour hotline that someone could access for immediate assistance.
Okay, so you can just call. You can just get out of the house.
Right.
You
call
get out of the house and you call that number.
0999. At any hour of the day or night, someone will answer the phone. And for instance, I've answered the phone and asked. The woman is hiding in her Jeep, and I call the police and I say, please go to such and such a place and pick this lady up and take her to such and such a place for me. And they do.
Okay. And suppose the husband come looking for the person at the Family Support Network.
They should know where the place is.
Well, we now keep the door locked because we've had that, and we now have a camera on the outside. And we will call the police.
Okay.
We are not in denial about a thing.
But it's, I mean, I don't know if I should ask this question, but are the victims of violence in that form, physical violence, kept in or protected in
Yes.
the domestic violence, in the Family Support Network site, or you have
No.
safe places
No,
where
no one
knows about?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So then so there's a way you make contact, you get to a safe location, and you follow through whether you need hospitalization or emergency care.
Right.
Yes.
Police, lawyer.
Food, lawyer, and all those things. There's a now a protocol that you
Yes.
go through
Right.
that offers safety, protection, privacy.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because a lot of people are concerned as well about the community knowing about Now, how about that? Is that something that we should be ashamed of? That there's a stigma
Domestic
attached?
violence?
Yeah.
No. People like to think that it is a private family matter. Domestic violence is not a private family matter. It is a public health concern. It's a public matter. It affects just about everybody. Okay, I'm sitting in this actually happened. I'm sitting in my office one day working, and I hear shouting downstairs, and I look through my window, and a guy has pulled into a parking spot, dragged a girl out of his car, and is kicking her in her head. She's on the ground, and he's kicking her in her head. Two men are standing right there watching it. One of them is huge. And all he's saying is, stop, stop. And I go to the phone, and I call the police right away, and 2 officers come to the scene. Okay? They took the young lady to the hospital. So I'm saying, it affects everybody. Prior to that, incident, I'd never actually seen it up close. Okay, read about it, learned about it, but never actually saw somebody, a big guy over 6 feet tall, kicking a little skinny girl in her head on the ground.
Okay.
Very often, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying that I think that there is shame a lot of times. The woman who is being abused, there's shame because we live in a community where many times because of the misunderstanding of abuse, people will say to you, well, what did you do to cause him to beat you?
Yes.
So the woman already feels like maybe I'm doing something, or not even the woman, it can be a man also. I have done something that's causing this to happen to me. And then then people find out, and there are ignorant people who will laugh. I have heard women discussing another woman getting beaten and laughing and saying, oh, why he put some licks on her last night. And it's like, you know, I'm incensed by it, but that's the way they think. So here is this person who's being abused at home, who's thinking, well, maybe something is wrong with me. So you don't want to come out and say anything because you can be ridiculed, you can be laughed at, you can be scorned, and you can be really belittled. So I think that a lot of people don't say anything. They stay in it until it's unbearable, and they get to the point where they can't take it anymore, and that's when they come out. But what we really need to be doing is educating the community that there is no shame in being abused. The shame is the abuser. And that you need to get help, you need to get support, and you need to be strong enough to say to yourself that you don't deserve this and to get out of it.
Okay.
And we as a community need to work with these people to help them to realize that as a community, we are going to support the person who is being abused because we know that it's not right.
Community support is very important because very often I hear people saying, oh, my neighbor, I heard my neighbor beating his wife, or I heard the woman next door beating her husband or her children. The community needs to be involved also. All of us have a responsibility. If you hear someone being beaten, or there's violence of some sort going on, yelling, screaming, smashing of things, you have the responsibility to call the police, to alert the police that there's something going on next door that needs attention. So we need to be responsible, not just for ourselves, but
for the whole community.
That's right.
Yeah. Now you were saying, Dr. McEnany, there's a forum coming up that the FSN is sponsoring. And
yes.
October 18th.
Talk to us a little bit about that in the time you have remaining.
Okay, October 18th, up at the college, HLSCC. It's a Saturday, of course. It's a half-day program where we want to highlight, well, it's also called domestic violence, who does it impact? And we want to highlight how it's impacting the workplace in particular, you know, your bottom line, the efficiency of people, you know, who are being abused and staying off work and stuff like that, but also how it's just generally impacting us as a community.
Right.
Okay, I mean, for instance, for this year, we have, in addition to 100 new female clients, 16 men. And of those 16 men, 6 came for protection orders. Means they're asking for a legal protection order against a female. Okay, so you can see how things have changed right there. And I don't think that that the 100 females or the 16 males is an indication that domestic violence is growing. I think it is an indication that Family Support Network, Gender Affairs, people involved in this arena are doing a better job of educating the public, and we're raising awareness. And so people now know that, you know, this is a resource I have, I can go there. I can get help there.
So the stigma is dropping off somewhat.
Yes, we're really hoping that it is, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work that a staff of 2 or 3 at Gender Affairs, a staff of 2 at FSN, you know, a small board trying to fit in Family Support Network into their own personal lives is trying to get out there and do all these things.
Okay. And persons that need to get help, give the numbers and the contacts they could make.
Okay, they can call during the day, 494-7622. There's always someone in the office. If it's an emergency, 499-0999.
That's 24 hours a day.
24 hours.
Right.
That's our hotline.
Right.
499-0999.
And there are people to respond.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so you have a response team that's
Yes.
ready 24 hours a day.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And you're saying that there was more reporting now.
Yes.
Men are less embarrassed
Yes.
to report
Yes.
women
That's
abuse.
very important because there are many women in this community, in all communities, that are abusive to the men they live with.
Yeah.
And the men are very often ashamed to come forward because they're afraid they're going to be looked down upon, like they're not man enough to handle their woman.
And a very interesting thing that's happening is that the courts are sending women to Family Support Network for anger management. Okay? So the courts are recognizing, because either the woman has been brought to court for hitting or for attacking this man, or they're in court for hitting or attacking someone else, but they're being sent for counseling now. Okay, and some of those women, in counseling, it has come out that they were abused for a period of time, and it sort of came full circle, and now they are the abuser. So you can get your anger to a point where you retaliate. You're no longer afraid, now you're hitting back.
Right.
That's very dangerous.
Okay, so just before we've fallen at 3 o'clock, and I want you to just talk a bit about the forum that's coming up again, who can attend, how you attend.
We want everybody to come out. We particularly would like people in human resources and employee assistance programs to come out to it. I think it will be very important to them. Dr. McInerney and Dr. Wright are presenters at that program, and I don't know if they can tell you in a few seconds what it is they're going to talk about.
Well, basically what we're going to talk about is the topic, who it affects and the ramifications of that it affects, the workplace, that, there are many studies that have been done indicating that there are millions of dollars being wasted in the workplace because people come to work abused and have not fully recovered, and they're not functioning on the job, or they have to take a day off. And it impacts children in terms of their ability to attend school and to be able to use the school environment as a learning experience because they're so overwhelmed and frightened from what they're experiencing at home.
Oh, we will have a survivor who will make a statement, and we will have a panel discussion, and there will be representatives from the police department, from the Bar Association. I think there's a private psychologist coming to be on that panel as well, and I think Dr. Sylvia Simmons, the Executive Director of Family Support Network, will also appear on that panel.
And
so
the location is where?
The
college. HLSCC.
And it's on the date?
9 o'clock on Saturday, October 18th.
Right.
For more information, they can call Gender Affairs, or they can call Family Support Network 494-7622.
Dr. McInerney, Dr. Maris Wright, Ms. Judith Charles, thanks for being on Spotlight. Certainly, it's always good to see you. Don't stay away so long. At one point, you guys used to be on the shows all the time.
Well, thank you
Thank
for
you very
having
much.
us, and we hope to see you at the forum.
Yes.
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 Okay, thanks. Yes. We're going to take a break for a word from our sponsors, and when we come back, we are going to answer the questions. How can you prevent strokes? How can you prevent the debilitating paralysis of strokes? How do you know when you're going to have a stroke or when you're having a stroke? What the symptoms of having a stroke actually are? Spotlight's interview with the BVI Health Service Authorities, Chief of Medical Staff, Dr. Joan Samuel, and HEMA Health of Puerto Rico neurologist, Dr. Ulysses Noble, will shine a light on the extremely important newly launched telestroke service at People's Hospital, and that will answer all of the questions and much more. Keep it locked right here to Spotlight. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands and CCT Global Communications.